There are two main problems with English spelling. Firstly, if you look at a word, you can't necessarily work out how to pronounce it. And then secondly, if you know how to say a word, you don't necessarily know how to write it down. But other than that, it's fine. Although that's not really fine because the main point of a writing system is to be able to write things down so that other people can say them out loud. It's important to remember that language is primarily spoken or signed. Writing came along much, much later, and then only for some languages. Actually, to be fair, the English writing system was very, very good at recording how people spoke in about 1490. The problem is, once printing and standard spelling came along, that got frozen in time, whereas the way people spoke continued to change. And now there's a big gap between the two. In this video, I'm going to concentrate on those sound changes that threw spelling and pronunciation out of whack, or is it whack, with each other. Let's start with a sound change that's still happening. WH was used to represent the sound wh in most of the words that we find it in. But that difference between wh and w has been lost in most of the English-speaking world, with the exception of Scotland, Ireland, and some parts of the southern US. This sound change is called the whine-whine merger. Can I have some more wine? Go on, please. Oh, will you stop whining about wine? Can I have some more wine, please? Oh, will you stop whining about wine? Can I have some more wine, please? Oh, will you stop whining about wine? People started merging their was and whas in England in about the 13th century, but it took up to the 18th century for it to be considered kind of acceptable in polite society. I've checked, and the last three British monarchs, so Charles III, Elizabeth II, and George VI, all said what and when, and not what and when. English has quite a few other silent letters, but in the vast majority of cases, these are there because they actually used to represent sounds that people actually said. Good example of these are KN, GN at the beginning of words, MB, and MN at the end of words. These were all simplified at some point during the 17th century, where there was a bit of a war on consonant clusters. Must have gone down well with the parents. Hey Dad, I can't get the knack of kneading this dough. I'm really tying myself in knots and really getting my knickers in a twist. I have spoken to you before about this newfangled way of speaking, which I can barely understand. So you can't get the knack of kneading, and then you said something about knots and knickers. Yeah, can you listen to what I'm saying rather than condemning the way I speak? It's condemning. It's got an N in it. Oh yes, whatever. Anyway, something's been gnawing the gnomes again. I can't get to sleep with all of them gnashing. Oh, again, it's gnawing gnomes, gnashing. Gnarly dude. Maybe it's lambs gnawing the gnomes. I think they're attracted by all of the crumbs that you forget to sweep up. Lambs don't gnaw gnomes, Dad. And anyway, it's crumbs without a B. It's never had a B in it. It's just those printers put it there, and then you old folks think that you have to pronounce it. Less of the old folks, if you don't mind. I'm not some knock-kneed, wrinkled old wreck quite yet. Anyway, I'm just worried that you'll never get a job if you leave out half of your letters when you speak. I must admit I was quite surprised when I found out about that wrinkled wreck combination, because WR is quite difficult to say, but that's where that two-letter combination comes from. It was used to represent the sound wr, which I find quite difficult to say. Having said that, though, people often say, oh, this was too difficult to say, so people stopped saying it, or people got lazy, so they didn't say it anymore. The modern word to write comes from Proto-Germanic ruitenan, and from Proto-Indo-European roi, meaning to rip or tear, with the idea of kind of ripping, tearing, scratching, writing into things. So basically, from 4500 BC until about 1750 something, people could be bothered to say wurra and didn't find it too difficult. So there you go. They'd been saying it for 1700 years before they gave up. Thought, I can't be bothered. I've been trying to work out what was actually going on in the 17th century that would cause people to suddenly stop saying these consonant clusters. Normally you'd think it would be a migration or a mixture of populations or something, but I can't really see that that was the case. What did happen was 3 civil wars, so maybe that caused a bit of mixture of population. It probably did. Anyway, if you know more about history or herstory or our story than I do, please let me know in the comments what you think was going on. There's one more feature of the consonant system that we haven't looked at yet, and that's what's going on with all those GHs that English seems to pepper all over the place. Well, that too represented a sound that people used to actually make. About a century earlier, in the mid-1500s, people stopped saying the h sound that used to be in words like heech, lauch, and toch. That really set the cat among the pigeons. This sound is called a Velar fricative, and it's found in languages like German and Welsh, Bach, Dutch, von Gogh, Spanish, Gijon, Arabic, Khalid, and Chinese, Heha. Lots of people call this sound guttural and imagine that it's pronounced somewhere kind of deeply swallowed. But actually it's pronounced in exactly the same place as sounds like k and g. The only difference is that instead of stopping the air completely and then letting it out in a little burst, you constrict the space between the tongue and the soft palate and make a friction noise instead. So you've got k. There you go. So that ch sound was spelt GH, and that's why you get GHs sprinkled seemingly randomly around English spelling. Now, the cat that was set among the pigeons is that it's difficult to predict what happened to that GH once it wasn't pronounced anymore. Now, sometimes it disappeared and lengthened the vowel before it. So you get licht becoming liet, and then through a process that we'll look at a little bit later, light. Sometimes it changed to an F, making the preceding vowel shorter. So lauch became laugh. Now that OU letter combination was a bit ambiguous. Sometimes it represented the sound O, and sometimes oo. Now that led to the rather mad situation that we have in modern English with a great range of words spelled OUGH, where the pronunciation is pretty unpredictable. Though, through, bow, roth, troth, thought, borough. Pronounced O, oo, ow, uth, oth, or respectively. I said I'd come back to why licht changed to light, so here goes. Have you ever wondered why in most of the other languages that use the Latin script, the vowel letters represent the vowel sounds a, e, o, u, whereas in English, at least in terms of long vowels, they represent a, e, I, o, u? Well, the answer to that question is the Great Vowel Shift. This is a public service announcement. The Great Vowel Shift will take place between 1400 and 1700 today. This will affect long vowels only. Please do not make any changes to short vowels, since this would lead to confusion. To maintain communication during the transition, vowels need to be shifted in the correct order. We shall start with the E sound in beat, as in does your dog beat? Some of you have already started to say beat. Keep that going through beat, arriving at bite by 1700. At the same time, you can start to change long oo, as in boot, like a boxing boot or a boot of the flu. This should be ow by 1700. Here too, you can transition through oo and o if you wish. By the end, the sentence Ur hus is a very, very, very nice house should have become our house is a very, very, very nice house. Once you are comfortable with I and ow,
you will notice we no longer have words pronounced E and OO. That's all right. We can start to fill those spots with words like bait and boat, saying beat and boot instead. Congratulations, that is the end of phase 1. This must be well underway by 1500, after which you can sit down with a nice cup of tea. Once you are well rested and you and your family are comfortable with the changes in the first phase, we can embark on the second. Here, we will make a slight change to the long vowel in mat, as in friend. We shall say mat for a while. Then you can start moving this towards mate. If you find this gets confused with mate as in the flesh of animals, you can start moving that into the space left by mate, which is now pronounced meat. So instead of let's mate at the mate counter mat, we have let's meet at the mate counter mate. After another tea break, you can complete the process by merging mate with meat and moving mate to where meat used to be. Let's meet by the meat counter mate.
So clearly that was a huge simplification, and the process took 300 years rather than 3 hours, and most people didn't have access to TV. And also it wasn't something that was done by decree, it was something that happened, and it happened at different speeds and to different extents in different parts of the country. The pronunciation changes continued after 1700, of course, but nothing as major as the Great Vowel Shift. So boat became boat and mate became mate, at least in the south. So after the Great Vowel Shift, the spelling of long vowels became totally divorced from the way they're pronounced. Previously, conventions like double E made sense because it was a long eh sound. Double O made sense because it was a long O sound. Another way of marking that a vowel was long was to put an E at the end of the word. Old English used to have lots of words that ended in vowels. But these final vowels eventually got de-stressed and became reduced. So wiku became weka. Nama became nama. By the invention of the printing press and the standardisation of spelling, even this final sound wasn't pronounced anymore. But the final E letter was useful in that it could be used to represent vowel length. So you had a word like bat, no E, and bat with an E. And then, of course, those long vowels also became subject to the Great Vowel Shift. That's how we get the magic E, or silent E, that makes vowels say their name. Johannes Gutenberg brought movable type printing to Europe in 1450, and it was introduced to England by William Caxton in 1476. Caxton soon realised that we needed a standard form of English and an agreed system of spelling if books were to be popular all over the country. Imagine how disappointed he would have been to find out just how much the language was about to change. Ladies and gentlemen, our new standard spelling will make it easy to read and read our language. Readers will say the Richtzones, and scribes will know which letters to read. Now, there's a certain misconception about how difficult the spelling of English is.
Spelling bees are kinda pointless outside English, because most other languages have spelling systems that are regular and predictable.
No, I'm sorry, PBS lady, it's not even near the most difficult spelling system in the world. Now, Irish spelling looks a lot scarier than it is, and there are rules to let you know that this is pronounced I. Those rules don't help you spell words that you hear but have never seen, though. The Thai writing system has 17 different symbols for the sound T at the end of a word. But the Tibetan writing system really takes the biscuit or the tsampa with yak butter tea. Its system hasn't been reformed since the 8th century. And this word is pronounced tup. Hasn't even got a T in it. Excellent. Thank you so much for watching. I recently got my millionth view, which was incredibly exciting. So thanks for that too. Check out this video next, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.